Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rashid Husein. I'm from Innopolis University. I'm professor at Secure System and Network Engineering Department. I'll be giving you the academic sides of cybersecurity, and I'll put some lights on the future of what security will look like in future and what we need to do to protect our systems. I'm the head of MS in Secure System Network Engineering Department, where we produce industry-oriented graduates for Russian industry who focus on information security and the needs of the industry. And my own research is on applied cryptography, and my specialization is in connected car technology. But recently I've been looking at other security primitives as well. From academic point of view, we focus on security from authentication, from privacy, from availability, so on. But from the other side of the picture, the industry focus on something else. Well, they mostly focus on attacks on their infrastructure, they focus on the risks, they focus on safety, hacking, and so forth. And they have this bigger picture in their mind. From security doctrine or security constitution point of view, there are two ways to think. One is the old way of thinking, where we protect information, we protect content, and we then protect network. But things have been changed throughout the year, and now what we think about is we need to protect services, and we need to protect information application rather than information. And we must operate through failures. For example, if you're an industry, then you just cannot sit in your chairs and do nothing about what is happening around you. Even if there's attack or even if your system is compromised, then you somehow need to operate through those failures. And you need to take the context of the application into account, because most of the time the same application might need different security features from you. So one thing that might work in one sense might not work in other. So that is why we need to focus on multiple directions or multiple dimensions of the security. And security, what I think, is nothing about the trade-offs. So for example, if you say that you're going to have a 100% secure system, then you're greatly mistaken. You cannot do that, because you have to compromise something to get something. For example, if you're talking about confidentiality, integrity, and availability, then there's a very fine trade-off between them, because you cannot provide all of these at the same time. So once again, application context comes into the picture. Well, again, there are two ends. One is the security and another one is the productivity. If you are focusing too much on security, you will lose productivity. And if you're protecting your system, and then you cannot be too productive. And there's a very thin and fine line between them, which is very hard to find. So, I mean, operationally, it is almost, I would say, not impossible, but infeasible to find that trend line. And whenever you find that key point in between productivity and security, then you could be successful. Another dilemma of today is that information is growing so fast and with so much velocity that it is very difficult to cope up with. And we have very much sophisticated attacks. I'm sure you already know about these attacks from the previous colleague of Group IB and the previous talks as well. And the mindset of the attackers, we need to know this mindset. And in the first place, if you talk about the volume of the data, then about 4.5 million tweets every minute, and 0.4 million tweets, every minute, and in millions of the comments and likes and Google searches and so forth. So what does that tell you? It tells you that as a human being, you cannot keep up with that pace. You need to automate, and you need to focus on the security at the same time. From the attacker mindset perspective, we have different kind of attackers with their own goals. If you're talking about militaries, governments, they have their own perspectives of these attacks. If you're talking about corporations, there's for monopoly, for competitions, and so forth. And there's some doomsday cult who wants to write their name in the books of the history and so forth. And you have to deal with them in a separate way. So that is also a challenge for industry these days. Another very important aspect of security is that we are getting more and more connected. Internet of Things is not a dream anymore, it is a reality. We have applications of Internet of Things and we are using it today. So this becomes the very battle between innovation and vulnerabilities. Complexity, our systems are complex than ever. We have some of the most complex systems you can ever, the human has ever seen. And the citizen, we as users, we have our own demands and we need to meet those demands and we want the industry to meet those demands for us. But what these are doing is that they're making us more prone to the security threats and vulnerabilities. But having said that, at the same pace, attackers are being more sophisticated as well. So those old days attacks, well, they're still out there. You would be surprised that the security attacks that we had in 90s and 2000, they're still being used. Why? Because of the same factor, that productivity and security. So people are not ready to be more sophisticated in order to sacrifice their productivity these days. And if you talk about malware, things are really devastating because millions of malware, new malwares are detected every day. If you see the trend, it is just increasing every year. And the new malware just in year 2018, so November 2018, we had 8.23 million new malwares. Just imagine how to cope with these malwares. And if you're talking about traditional mechanism to keep up with these kind of malwares, you'll be mistaken and you won't be able to find it. Why? Because traditionally you talk about anomaly detection, you talk about signature-based solution for that, but that might not work in this case. Why? Because signature might be different and so forth. I don't want to go into details, but traditional mechanism might not work. Most of you might know the Mire, which literally crippled the whole internet back in 2016. And it was because of what? Because of just an undergraduate student who wanted to have fun with internet and who wanted to have fun with the devices that are insecure. And it literally crippled the internet. So it gives us some lesson to learn from that, because we need to have more sophisticated mechanism to cope up with these security issues. And the Dyn and OVH, these are the companies, they were almost bankrupted because of this Mire malware. And it was just a job of an undergraduate student. If you see here, this was the result of the Mire malware, and these many devices were affected throughout the world, which is even more devastating. If you have a device connected to internet and it is not properly secure, you're not doing it right, then what you're doing is that you're putting everything that we work for at the risk. So that should be a focal point as well. Ransomware, WannaCry, most of you might know that it already, bankrupt people, and $1 million were stolen because of this ransomware. But the list is too large to keep up with. Just to give you an idea what is going on. And automation. Another nightmare is that these days the viruses, the security issues have become too worse that you don't need to have an executable. I mean, you don't have to click on some file to become a virus for you. So this year, more than 35% of attacks were fileless. So if these are the fileless attacks, now we have to change our mindset as well about how we are going to cope up with these attacks. So automation is another problem. Now coming to my focal point of this talk, which is talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence. So these are the two terms which are, somebody would say these are buzzwords, but the thing is that this is the need of the day. Without machine learning and artificial intelligence, we cannot, as human beings, cope up with these security challenges. Well, in machine learning, it is the capability without explicitly programmed systems to learn. And artificial intelligence says that imitating intelligent human behavior. So if something imitates human behavior in its nature, then we can say that it is using artificial intelligence. And there are three major aspects of artificial intelligence. First one is applied AI, second one is artificial general intelligence, and the third one is strong AI. So in the first one, it sees that it's very focused on some specific area. For example, if you talk about Apple Siri, if you talk about some malware detection mechanism, object recognition, and so forth, these are just applied artificial intelligence. And the second one, it says artificial general intelligence. You bring the system up to the human level so it can think like a human. And the third one says that it should have conscience and self-awareness. But as of today, we are very far from the second and the third, and we have only applied artificial intelligence. And if we use even this applied artificial intelligence, it would be better for our most of the security issues that we have today. So as an example, if you think about autonomous car, then itself is an artificial intelligence driven device. But if you think about the object detection mechanism of that autonomous car to detect, let's say, a pedestrian, then it is the function of machine learning. So you can just differentiate between these two. Why do we need learning? Because as I said, as a human being, we have this limitation, the volume of data and so forth. So human intuition is really hard. But once again, these are two puzzles that we need to sit together and we need to think about. Without human being, even this artificial intelligence and machine learning will become a curse. Why? I will talk about that in a moment. And the cybercrimes, the pace of cybercrime is changing. We need to keep up with that mindset as well. Once you are in the head of that attacker, then you can think about the measure or countermeasures for those attacks, without which you'll be just shooting in the dark, I would say. Well, I already covered this. I will just focus more on the downsides of machine learning. Not, I would say, downside, but what are the repercussions of using machine learning? Because if we think that machine learning could do better for us, then we are not the only people who are using machine learning. Attackers are also using machine learning as adversarial machine learning. So if the attackers learn approximation through these machine learning models, then they could use that machine learning model against their machine learning techniques that we are using for security. So, well, there could be defeats in the machine learning through the machine learning, which sounds very stupid, but it is happening. How? Recently, there have been research that if we are able to change some features in, let's say, image, then we can fool the machine learning techniques to, let's say, recognize this panda as an apple or as any other object with more than 99% accuracy. And recently, as recent as last month, there was a research that even if you're able to change 1 pixel in an image, then you can still change the result up to 99%. What does it say? It says that you have to be extremely careful by designing machine learning techniques, because the same machine learning techniques can be used by attackers as well. So, well, this does not stop us from being the users of machine learning, but we need to be very smart about how do we use this machine learning. And some other advanced behavioral attacks based on these machine learnings will also be possible through these attacks. But Okay, so, well, these machine learning techniques could use the same machine learning that we could use for security reasons and so forth. So where do we go from now? There's no silver bullet to talk about information security, to secure our systems, but we could use both the tools that we use today and human capabilities. Without human, it would be just a waste of resources and waste of other mechanisms as well. Where could we use machine learning? Of course, we are using it in DDoS, in authentication, and so forth. But the list goes on, and we have more of the applications where could we use machine learning and artificial intelligence. So there are a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges, but the stakes are high. If we don't do anything about it, we'll be lost once again in the ages where there were rulers to be called attackers, and we could do nothing about it. So AI or ML is not a silver bullet, but the intelligence of both machine learning and human will prevail. With that, I will end up my talk. Thank you so much.